Alisa Petrov is alive and safe. It is a shocking update to a mystery that has been unfolding in Utah for the past 5 weeks.
Guys, my necklace fell off, but I'm trying to put it back on now. Seriously, it's a good thing it fell off on my chair.
We've learned this missing teen walked into a Colorado police station Sunday night. Police say she's in good health, but there are still a lot of questions about how she got there and where she's been since she vanished on April 21st. Meanwhile,
Mr. Menard, can you hear me?
Yes.
one of the 3 men charged for allegedly having twisted and sexually graphic conversations with Petrov online made his first appearance in court today. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. A major sigh of relief in the story of Alisa Petrov. That teenager is safe and her family is on their way to being reunited with her. The teenager walked into a police station in Colorado Springs, Colorado Sunday night. That is more than 500 miles east of where she was last seen 5 weeks ago on April 21st in Provo, Utah. Now, her mom dropped her off that day at school in American Fork, Utah, outside Salt Lake City. Police say this teenager didn't go to school. Instead, she went to a convenience store nearby, where you see this picture from surveillance video put out by the South Jordan, Utah police. Petrov then was able to get a ride from a stranger, according to police, to a nearby train station, and from there, she took a short train ride 20 minutes south to Provo, Utah. And that was the last time anyone saw Petrov until Sunday night. Colorado Springs seems to be a very surprising location for her to be based on what we knew to this point in this case. It had been reported that Petrov was seen at the Provo train station asking people for ways to get to Las Vegas. That's more than 5 hours southwest of Provo, Utah. The Las Vegas connection has to do with this man, Matthew Menard.
Mr. Menard, can you hear me?
Yes.
Here he is making his first court appearance today in Salt Lake City. He attended virtually from the Utah County Jail and showed little emotion in the brief hearing. The 35-year-old from Miami is facing several charges for allegedly having sexual and twisted, graphic online conversations with the missing 15-year-old going back to January. Police say the two talked up until the day before Petrov ran away. Before we get back to this story, I want to bring you a Law&Crime legal alert. Did you know that children under 21 are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? And research is suggesting that ultra-processed foods are linked to these outcomes. Our partners at Morgan & Morgan are stepping in to fight to hold food companies accountable. They have decades of experience fighting large corporations, and they're ready to stand up for families who deserve justice. If your child under the age of 21 has been diagnosed with a serious condition like type 2 diabetes or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, go to www.forthepeople.com/food. You can also scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description to learn more. Police say Menard solicited sex, sodomy, and child sex abuse material from this 15-year-old girl, and they say he knew that she was underage. Menard also allegedly came up with a plan for Petrov to meet him in Las Vegas. He told the girl he was going there for work in late May, and he said she should go there before he gets there and hide out. Then he said they would go to Los Angeles before returning to his home in Miami. Not only do police say that Menard talked about having sex with Petrov, knowing that she was 15 years old, he said that they could hide her identity by telling people that she was his daughter. At the hearing today, Menard's defense attorney waived the reading of the charges in court. Menard will have another hearing next week on Monday to look at whether he will be granted bail. He's currently being held without bail. There are 2 other men facing charges in connection to sexually graphic conversations online with Petrov before she vanished. The next man expected to be in court this week is Samuel Mitchell. We don't have a lot of information on him at this point, but we know he will be in court on Wednesday this week. This is what we do know about him as well. He's 41 years old from Harriman, Utah. That's about a half hour from where Petrov lived, both outside of Salt Lake City. He was connected to Petrov through conversations on Snapchat and Discord cord that police discovered, and police believe that he may have had video calls with the girl. Police say that they found child sex abuse material on Mitchell's phone of a girl who's believed to be about 12 years old and another girl who looks to be 15, but police didn't say in court documents if any of the images on his phone were Alisa Petrov. The third man, William Glines, is in custody in Texas City, Texas. Police say they found his conversations with Petrov after the girl went missing because they were going through her online history and discovered some twisted conversations that he was having with the girl online. Glines is facing charges in both Texas and Utah. Mitchell and Menard are both facing charges in Utah.
Guys, my necklace fell off, but I'm like trying to put it back on now. Seriously, it's a good thing like it fell off on my chair.
On her YouTube page, Petrov posted videos that show her being a very typical teenager.
And I'm gonna use some brown.
Is anyone missing a little ring?
I wish, bro.
Oh, that might be one of my friends.
But after her disappearance, there were some very concerning clues on her online accounts. This is what her TikTok said under her name. You can look at her profile description. It reads, "Mom and Dad, I love you so much. 4/16/2010 to 4/21/2025. That's her birthday to the day that police say she ran away. And as the weeks went on, this ominous message and what appeared to be silence on social media for someone who was so online before she vanished raised so many concerns. And there are still so many questions about what happened to Alisa Petrov and where she's been for the last several weeks. At the time of this recording, all we know is that she walked into that police station in Colorado Springs and her family is now on their way to be reunited with her. Join us now once more to talk about this case is missing persons private investigator Steve Fisher, who also worked for the family of Alisa Petrov. As the search continued up until Sunday night, Steve, first, what is your reaction? What was your reaction when you read that Alisa Petrov showed up at this police station in Colorado Springs?
Well, obviously very happy, but kind of shocked. I'll tell you, there was a few cities on our list, and Colorado Springs was not one of them. So it was definitely a surprise, and it'll be interesting to find out exactly how she got there and what the circumstances were. But obviously, very relieved, as is the family, that she's alive.
Yeah, what is? I know you've been in touch with the family. What have they told you since the news has come out that she's okay?
Well, they, just about how happy they were. They are flying there to get her. I've given them space, obviously, until they get back and catch their breath, including her. So I don't have too many details besides they're overjoyed that she's safe.
It's incredible because I know last week as we've been in touch throughout this, it just felt like as the weeks went on, and she was someone who, like so many teens, is just so online, and then it was just nothing, and then you just worried, what that would mean. But she physically is okay, shows up at the police station. What are the main questions you have at this point about everything that happened over the last 5-6 weeks?
Yeah, and I agree. Listen, as the time went on, that 5 weeks, it got really scary. And especially because I was in Vegas the last 4 days searching, and nobody knew, none of the people in that kind of underground industry or anything knew anything. And it really worried me. So this is a great outcome. But, the things that I'd like to know is, directly tied to her getting to Colorado Springs, who got her there? Because I'm assuming that it most likely was a private party. If it was by Greyhound or something, then I'd be kind of disappointed that there was a breakdown in the ability for law enforcement to scan that surveillance well enough at Salt Lake or wherever it may have been for her boarding the bus. So I assume it's probably by private party. How did she meet that private party? And why were they willing to take her 600 miles or whatever it is? And who has she been with for the last 5 weeks? Somebody I doubt she's living on the street, and especially it gets awfully cold there at night, even in the summer. Who's she been with, and why did she not call her parents or not call law enforcement number that's on the flyer, assuming she probably saw the social media campaign? And I imagine, not just social media, but the news, like yourself covering this, is probably what got her or somebody to drop her off at the police station. Why didn't she call her parents or whatever first? Why was she dropped off at a police station or come into a police station, I should say?
Right, because and it was surprising too as I thought about it because she's found east of Utah, and it felt like the locations that we had potentially talked about of where she may be, everything was west, right? Like you had Las Vegas, and you look at this plan that Matthew Menard allegedly put together online, and we'll talk about him in just a moment. But it was, hey, we're going to meet in Las Vegas because I'm there for work. Then we'll go to Los Angeles, and then eventually we'll go back to Miami. And then she ends up in a place where it seems like no one, at least publicly, was expecting. What resources, and I know you've talked with the family, have you been piecing it together? Because I'm just thinking like, yeah, Greyhound bus maybe to Colorado Springs, something like that. I should have checked beforehand. I don't even know if Greyhound goes direct, you think, from like a Salt Lake or a Provo, or if she would have had to go through Denver or something like that on a bus. But what resources did she have with her that we know about that could have given her access to the ability to move as she did to get to a place like Colorado Springs?
So the family knew that she had about $1,000 or between $1,000 and $1,500 cash on her, and that checked out when she got off on the the train in the Provo station and attempted to buy a Greyhound ticket. Her problem was that they don't have a counter at that station; they just have a kiosk where you can use a credit card. So what she was doing is she had asked a couple people if she could give them cash and if they could use their credit card to buy her a ticket to Las Vegas. And so that's why Vegas was really on our map. That combined with the messaging that was found in Menard's devices. So that really threw us off. And I don't know if it was a last second change. She did, after the people that she asked, there's a food bank right by that Provo station. And the people that she had asked were some people that were kind of down on their luck and they didn't have credit cards to do that with. Then she did ask somebody that worked at the food bank that drives their shuttle buses for a ride to Salt Lake, which they said, no. And she was willing to pay for, to buy a ticket, or she was willing to pay cash. So I don't know if she just ran across somebody that she was seeing. This is something that wasn't, I don't think, too out there, but she was witnessed talking to somebody in an SUV at that station, but it was not, you could not tell from the surveillance for whatever reason if she left in that car or not. So I don't know if she just ran across a private party or if she went to Salt Lake and changed her mind, or if there's an element to this that we just we're yet to find out about. It's hard to say. It's confusing for sure how she ended up in Colorado Springs. And the more confusing thing to me is who's she been with the last 5 weeks.
Right, because part of me wonders, like, was she able to, like, if she had like $1,000 in cash, does that get you to Colorado Springs? Then maybe does she like rent a hotel? But they wouldn't rent, I assume, if you don't have ID on you to be 15. You're 15. It's not like she would have had like a hotel room on her own for the last couple of days. So like she had to have been, we assume, with someone else. What do we know what electronics she had with her? Like a cell phone, or I know they found this iPad that eventually led them to all these conversations with the three men charged in this case. But was it just the cash? And I know she had that backpack. Was that really it?
Well, I personally, I don't have any exact information on this, but I personally believe that it's highly likely she had a burner phone. I do, from her call records, I can't disclose exact contents of it. I can tell you that there was a dramatic shift in usage and so a couple of weeks before. So to me, it looked like, there had been a change in device. But there was no record of that anywhere. So she very well could have, and we weren't sure if that was something like Menard had maybe arranged for her to get or even sent to her somehow. And he could listen, that element of it, you could have no part in. We don't know. I think we'll find out. But I think that there probably was another device that that the family was not aware of, and it definitely was not on their one that they had purchased or on their plans, because when they found out about the 8-year-old iPad they had forgot about, they did thoroughly go back and check every device that they ever bought and whatnot.
Because if she had her cell phone, that was her cell phone, or a laptop that was hers. I know in her YouTube videos, like, she has a laptop, she logs onto that. I assume that would have sent out an alert that that's where she would have been. Like, that's something that she wouldn't have been able to log on, I'm saying, from the known devices that she had.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yes, and they certainly were monitoring that. In fact, there was an instance where the father had, early on had tried to access an account to see if he could find out anything, and it drew a warrant the next day. So they were on top of that, and she did have those. She did have two devices with her, and so they can track the IMEIs to see if it's like a new SIM's been put in or something, or it's been sold, to a kiosk or whatnot. But yeah, it didn't. As far as we know, it didn't. I will say, yesterday, myself and my analyst did notice a couple new accounts with kind of different, strange account names that showed up on her following list, which is only something that she can add people to, or whoever's in control of the account, unless it's an account that deactivated and then all of a sudden suddenly reactivated at some point. But there was a couple changes in the last 48 hours, so I'm wondering if maybe that was her through a different account, or somebody else. And I guess we'll find that out.
Yeah, and I'm sure from the time that we're taping this interview to probably a couple hours from now, we'll have more information. Full disclosure for people watching, Matthew Menard expected to make his first court appearance in about an hour from the time that
Yeah.
we're recording this right now, just so if anything does become dated in the interview, that's why. But for the three men who are facing charges, Glines, Mitchell, and Menard, related to Alisa Petrov's disappearance, how does her being alive affect their cases now?
Well, especially for Menard, it's a big deal because Menard, with the enticement and in her, um, potentially been lured out of the house going to Vegas. I mean, if something had happened to her along that way, he can be charged with that homicide, because it's death at hands of another, and because he lured her, enticed her, even if he didn't plan on going, that was still hanging over his head. So I think that's probably a relief to him. It shouldn't. I don't think it shouldn't change the charges much. She's only a witness in those. This is the state versus those men, but she is a key witness. So I guess it comes down to, listen. It's going to be a traumatic experience for a 15-year-old, no matter what the circumstances, to have all your business, aired out. In a public trial like that. So, we don't know. I mean, it probably does help them on a plea deal a little bit, but, we'll find out more as these hearings go on, like today's, which we'll find out if they get bail or not.
Right, and that's a big part of it. Mitchell is expected in court on Wednesday, similar type of appearance as Menard is having today. How could her turning up, but then what we know about his background impact whether or not he remains in the Salt Lake County Jail?
Yeah, so on Mitchell, there was actually a risk assessment that was posted to the docket where, they do an assessment of whether this person they think is safe to put out on bail or own recognizance. And the actually recommendation was to let him out on his own recognizance with some conditions, one being, I think, weekly check-ins or something like that. It was a bit surprising, but the fact is that he does not have a previous record, and they deemed him a very low, risk to the community to reoffend. Menard, there is not a risk assessment, at least publicly available. There might be privately, and I don't know if that's because he's not a Utah citizen like Mitchell is, or why that is. But he does not have a record either. I mean, as far as I think he has possibly has a DUI, but doesn't have any felony arrests or convictions. So it could, if that's what the situation is for Mitchell, then that very well could be for Menard as well. We could see him, walk out of jail.
Yeah, and for Menard, I mean, he's the one who, not only do you have these sick, twisted conversations, it was, hey, if we're ever seen out in public, you're my daughter. So that's, disgusting. But it's also, he's accused of coming up with this plan to have her leave. And I think too, if she were to take the witness stand, and we got a long way to go, and gosh, you hope mentally that she's okay. But if she's to say, yeah, I left home thinking that I would eventually go meet Matthew Menard, you wonder how that would impact his case. What do we know at this point about Matthew Menard? And it's been reported that he works in tech, that he had a good job. In your experience in these stories, not only do what we know about him, but the fact that this is someone who's not from a walk of life where he has a long, lengthy criminal record. Like when you look at Glines' record, he's been in trouble with the law before. It seems like for Matthew Menard and for Mitchell that they've never been in this type of situation.
And you got to believe that this probably isn't the first situation that they've been in where this, was chargeable. This wasn't their first try at this. It's just that they've gotten away with it. At least that's, my belief. Now, so Menard, here's a guy that, like you said, had very, I don't know if he still does or not, but at least had a very good, job. He seemed like a family person. He had a serious girlfriend. I believe they were engaged. I did, speak yesterday to her counsel because I was trying to talk to her. She was, as I imagined, caught completely, flat-footed on this without any idea, and obviously devastated. So these are people that spend a lot of time creating these false narratives and these fake identities, and although he did give out his real number and stuff, but it's literally a second life they've got going on, and it's just dark. And I did learn yesterday is Menard actually, his Vegas trip had canceled, and I don't think Alisa was ever told of that. And had she, I do believe she was originally intending on going to Las Vegas. So she was at a kiosk trying to buy a ticket to Las Vegas. I think something changed at the last minute because she couldn't get to Vegas easily, and maybe a private ride opportunity opened up or something like that. But this could have just been a sick, twisted game of him to get her away from it. He told her how to run away and remain undetected. It could have been he had no intention of actually meeting her, even though he said he did. And that's just as sick and twisted to lure a 15-year-old out of her house, have her run away, and go off into a city with a backpack is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and we're expecting to learn more about Matthew Menard and all of these suspects as this case, now that Alisa's back in the safety of her family and police, that we'll see how the criminal element of this plays out. And just lastly, Steve, before we kind of wrap up this part of the story, as we've been following it now for a couple of weeks, in your experience, you professionally look for people who are missing. I mean, to see this timeline, 6 weeks she was gone, no word of her. How often does this happen where you have this type of ending where she's actually ended up back with her family after all of the things that we were talking about, like even the internet history? It just seemed to cut off out of nowhere. I just, for me, as kind of someone who watches this, it just felt like that it wasn't headed down the right track.
Well, there's been a couple cases, maybe, but vast majority, this is not a good outcome. There's a case not too long ago, girl out of Arizona that just waited till her 18th birthday and then popped up in a police station. But this is a girl who truly, when her family says she's always on her phone, she is always on the internet, and to not leave and I believe she probably was on the internet still, but to be able to I don't know what advice Menard gave her as a tech guy, and that coupled with, just being a teen and figuring this stuff out on the internet. It's remarkable that she didn't leave a digital footprint somewhere. But what it comes down to is, we have databases from the Department of Justice, so we can access that. You put in all these variables in search and rescue, and it'll give you a probability of outcome. And it was like 4% that this was going to be a good turnout. So with that much time passed, so this is a remarkable outcome. This is not the typical outcome.
No, and you think for her dad, who's been on TV and has been pleading with her to come home, her mom as well, to the phone call that they got last night must have been just an incredible moment for that family. Steve Fisher, missing persons private investigator. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.